Hello teacher, I am Büşra Yılmaz. I am recording this video for homework 4 of the SE 308 course, which is continuous of the homework 3. It is worth mentioning that since this homework is a continuation of homework 3, the tests are named as Task 3 and Task 4. Now I want to display Task 3. Now I want to show the Task 4 for the homework 4. Now I want to explain the task 3. First, I defined the form elements and values outside of the class, as you can see here, because enum values cannot be defined inside of a class. Since 4 values were requested in the assignment, I defined them as all, text, check, and drop. Then to use these values, I created an instance of form element where the all value includes of the form element values. After that, I created a drop-down button form element widget. It's here. The drop-down color specifies the background color of the drop-down menu, and I set it to the white. Then I assigned the form element instance to the value property of the drop-down button. Selected form element was initialized from there. I displayed it before. For the drop-down button, I wanted to perform a common operation on all the menu items. So I use the map function for each enum value, as you can see here, as a form element. A drop-down menu item will be returned. The critical part here is that each returned enum value, for example, form element.drop, needs to be converted to as a string for further processing, because inside of text, a string value must be located. I used the toString default method for this purpose to display the values like drop, as you can see here, all text, check, and drop without form element dot operations. I cut the string starting from dot using the toString dot split default method and displayed the last part of the value inside the text widget. Since this is a map list, and latest I added the toList default method at the end of this widget. To get the updated value based on user interaction, as you can see from here, I assigned the selected form value, the drop-down button, to the value property. I assigned the selected value from the drop-down button to the value property inside the onChange default method of the drop-down button. Then, when I click the send button, I created a method from here. This is called form element director for visibility checks as an asynchronous function, and it was called inside of the onPressed default method of the elevated button. Again, I want to go there. This function is an asynchronous function with the async keyword. Inside this method, I use 3 Boolean variables, as you can see. And for each condition, there are 4 conditions. The booleans were updated according to the state. For example, when text is selected from there, the booleans for text are set to true, and the others are set to false within the setState method. The same applies to the other as if conditions. If none of these 3 options are selected from there, if none of these 3 options are not selected, again you can see from there, all remains. And in that case, the booleans is check element chosen, is text element chosen, is drop down element chosen are set to the true. By making all elements visible, I added the visibility widget for the necessary widgets, and that should be controlled by the booleans, and each visibility widget provided with the corresponding boolean controller. This way, the visibility of the required widget is controlled according to the selected drop-down option. The rest operations are the same in task 2. I want to display it. For example, I enter 3 characters text string, then I send, I can see, and just text widget is here. For example, check, just check is here. For example, drop, just drop is here. For example, all of them are here. In task 4, to manage the validation condition with a single Boolean variable, I initially added a variable named isSharedBool. I then disabled the previous condition checks for checkbox is checks value and drop down selected value by commenting them out, as you can see in here. In validate and update function, which is there, to prevent the text field validation from being triggered when a change occurs in the drop-down button or checkbox, I added an optional Boolean validate text parameter. This ensures that when the user makes a selection in the drop-down button or checkbox, as you can see, then the text field validation will not run by helping this if condition, and the you cannot leave this blank message will only appear when the send button is clicked, or when a specific text field validation is needed. For example, in here, when the validation is successfully, then it will work. Then I construct the isShared Boolean. If it is null, then I equalized the isShared Boolean global variable to parameter of the validation and update method from there. This was occurred in the setState function. Next, I synchronized the values of the related checkbox and dropdown button is shared and called the validate and update method within the onChange callback. I want to show it in the code. As you can see, I use is shared Boolean variable from the value of the dropdown button and checkbox. And also onChange default method, I called this validate and update method. And also I set to the validate text variable to false value. This aims to prevent other conditions from being affected when calling the validate and update method and to ensure that the process only happens when the send button is clicked. Therefore, I set the validate text parameter to false for the both case of the function. In the elevated button, as you can see, on press function, when validate and update function is called, the validate text parameter is a true value because of a default value for the validate text equalized to the true. This adjustment optimized the validation and message display to work only in the desired scenarios. Finally, I want to show the final step. Finally, I printed is shared Boolean value within the content string value. The remaining functionality and code are the same as in task 3. Now it's time for the local history of task 3. I tried enum creation. I added the drop-down button form field. I created enum outside of the class. I created form element variable. I continued with the drop-down button field there. Again, I tried to fill it. Continue. I added some comments. String operation. Unchanged operation of the drop-down menu item. Some controls. To align the drop-down button form field at the center, I changed the drop-down button form field to drop-down button. I added the drop-down color. I added the controller of the each drop-down menu item. Then I created the statements according to the each drop-down menu item. I created the if statements. Then I generalized this operation as a method. Finally, I converted the method to the asynchronous method and I located it in the elevate button on pressed parameter. Now I want to display the local history of task 4 for the homework 4. Before starting, it must be noticed that since I changed the folder name from homework 3 to homework 4, the local history for homework 3, all tests, and test 3 was deleted. I want to start. There is no changes. In here, I remove these boolean values from the code. I start to add boolean value, boolean its shaped value. In here, continuous as a local history state, and also from there. For the last state, isShape boolean variable was added to the code, and also I changed the validate and update function parameters, as you can see from here. And also I changed this if condition from these lines to these lines. And one more thing, I changed the value variables of the checkbox and also drop-down button from isChecked and selected value to isChecked common boolean variable. I also changed the validate and update drop-down value and checkbox value parameters to the isChecked boolean parameters. And for the text at the bottom of the screen, I changed the isChecked and selected value variables to isChecked variables. Finally, I want to show it. Finally, I added a validate text parameters to be ensured that the validation text is completed after the send button is clicked. As you can see from there, before the elevated button on press, validate text parameter was set to the false value to prevent this on press button functionality when it was not clicked.